Hogwarts will always be there to welcome you home, and so will these amazing Harry Potter theories. Seriously, you're not ready to hear about Fred and George's secret power, class size. Let's start with a few theories that aren't known that well, but they actually seem pretty believable. In one of her interviews, J.K. Rowling said there are about 1,000 students at Hogwarts. But have you ever noticed that in the movie as well as in the books, Harry's year is pretty small? The movies show about 18 students in Harry's year, and the books rarely mention anyone else besides the people you already know. It doesn't add up if you think Hogwarts is supposed to have thousands of students. A Tumblr user, Marauders Forever, came up with the most amazing theory ever. And it's kind of sad too. We know Voldemort was at the Reign of Power between 1979 and 1981, which would have been the years when Harry's class would be born. There's a connection between all those facts. If you think about it, when Voldemort was at the Reign of Power, not a lot of people survived. And since he reigned during the time when Harry's class would have been born, this Tumblr user assumes that this is exactly why his class was so small. It's a pretty dark theory, but it definitely would make sense, right? The cursed job. We all know that defense against the dark arts was a cursed job position, but it was never really explained why. We also know that the curse tried to be lifted by Albus Dumbledore himself, but he wasn't able to. A Reddit user has an interesting theory on why that might be the case. The curse on the position started from the moment Dumbledore refused the job to Voldemort, and we've also seen Voldemort hide his diadem Horcrux in the Room of the Requirement. The entrance and the exit of the Room of the Requirement could be placed anywhere, like we've seen it in the last book, where the students avoid the Carrows. This Redditor thinks that Voldemort's requirement when hiding the diadem involved the defense against the dark arts position to be cursed. His soul was anchored to one of the most magical parts of the castle and acted as a fuel for the curse. The Redditor also adds that J.K. Rowling actually confirmed that the curse was lifted following Voldemort's passing and the destruction of the diadem. So it's safe to say there's definitely some truth to the fact that Voldemort really did try to make sure no other person could become the Defense Against the Dark Arts professor for too long. The Dursleys are innocent. This is a popular theory, and there actually might be some truth to it. It also ties into Voldemort's Horcruxes, which, as we discovered, changed how we see the story completely. But these theories changed them again. So this popular fan theory states that the Dursleys weren't actually as mean as they seem to be. Let's remember that Petunia was forced to take Harry in once his parents passed away, but since Voldemort made Harry an accidental Horcrux, it means that whoever's nearby him could potentially feel the negative effects Horcruxes have. We saw this work very well in Deathly Hallows, but what if Harry, as a Horcrux, had this effect on the Dursleys? What if they actually behaved this way because of the Horcrux? Of course, this theory shouldn't excuse abuse Harry endured in any way. Daniel Radcliffe actually shared his sentiments on this theory and said that the Dursleys would have been quite a different family without Harry. He did say that he felt like the Dursleys just really hated having Harry around, but that this is a pretty cool theory. Of course, Petunia's bitterness also came from the fact that she never got to be a witch like her sister. So who knows if things would actually change if Harry wasn't a Horcrux. Umbridge's Locket. Umbridge is probably one of the most hated characters in the entire Harry Potter series. Harry Potter fans have a theory about the Slytherin's Locket, which turned out to be one of Voldemort's Horcruxes. We told you, the entire Harry Potter story really changes once you start theorizing on the creation of the Horcruxes. This theory is similar to the theory about Dursleys, but it's still pretty interesting. We all know that Umbridge was wearing Salazar Slytherin's locket, and that she was totally evil when she was. Do you see where we're going with this? So what if the Horcrux had an extra effect on her too? When you combine it with the fact that the Defense Against the Dark Arts position was cursed because of another Horcrux, and the fact that Harry was another one, it can mean that Umbridge was just simply under the power of too many Horcruxes. J.K. Rowling actually responded to these theories and stated that while the Horcruxes would have definitely added to her existing evil demeanor, Umbridge was, in fact, evil on her own too. To be fair, we're kind of relieved because the last thing we want to have is sympathy for Dolores Umbridge. Afterlife. There are a couple of Harry Potter theories out there about the afterlife that actually seem pretty believable. We'll discuss one more later on, but let's check out one right now. One of these theories focuses on Hedwig, everyone's favorite pet owl. A Redditor stated that Hedwig could actually be Lily Potter. This Reddit user states that Hedwig always seemed extremely protective of Harry and knew what was happening at all times. She was far too intelligent and empathetic. The Redditor also states that Hedwig would comfort Harry even during the time he would stay at the Dursleys. The user also theorizes that Lily Potter's Patronus would definitely be a snowy owl. Do you see where we're going with this? Another Redditor also claimed that Hedwig's passing came immediately after Harry's 17th birthday, which would be the age when the protection spell from his childhood would have worn off. Some even state that Hedwig was actually a reverse Horcrux, and when Lily passed, a part of her soul became Hedwig. Although the last theory makes less sense, we can definitely see how Lily's spirit could live on in Hedwig. After all, she was definitely the best pet a person could ask for, wasn't she? Snape's alive. Snape's entire character is a big fan theory that actually came true if you think about it. He definitely had one of the best redemption stories ever. Some fans seem to think that Snape is still alive, and they have a couple of points to share. A Reddit user came up with some pretty impressive evidence to support this theory, and the first one comes from the fact that Snape doesn't appear during the summoning with the Resurrection Stone. Snape would have been very important to Harry, but yet he didn't appear with the stone, even if Lupin did. And another piece of evidence states that Snape's body was nowhere to be found after the Battle of Hogwarts. All other bodies were laid out on the floor, but Snape's body wasn't there at all. And you'd think a skilled potions professor could save himself from Nagini's fang poison, right? Snape was the master at potions, but he couldn't find an antidote? He was a spy after all. He seemed to have a lot of trust in Nagini because we'd definitely make sure she wouldn't be able to attack us. So could it be that he's still alive after all? Or is that just wishful thinking? Albus Dumbledore and Slytherin. Here's another theory. This one connects Dumbledore to Salazar Slytherin. And while it might be one of the lesser-known theories, it's definitely still interesting. Some of this information comes from Fantastic Beasts, where you can definitely learn some backstories on a few characters. We learn about Isolde Sayre, a Slytherin descendant, who had 2 daughters that understood Parseltongue. And we all know Dumbledore seems to understand Parseltongue perfectly well, and J.K. Rowling even implied that you can only be born with the Parseltongue knowledge. There's no way anyone would be able to just pick up Parseltongue and learn it, and we all know that Ron's attempt was just pure luck. So how is Dumbledore able to understand Parseltongue then, and how does this connect to Salazar Slytherin? In Deathly Hallows, we learn a thing or two about Dumbledore's mother, Kendra, including that she looks like a Native American. This relates to the fact that Isolde's squib daughter Martha actually married a Native American man. The theory states that Kendra is actually related to Martha, as she seems to have Native American features herself, which also means that Dumbledore's related to Isolde Sayre, who's a Slytherin descendant. What do you think? Believable? McGonagall's secret. Okay, this next theory is pretty dark. Actually, it's by far one of the darkest theories we're sharing today, and it will definitely change your perspective on McGonagall. She might be everyone's favorite character, but you might change your mind after you hear this story. If there's one thing Harry Potter fans want more than anything, is that Harry was never left with the Dursleys. They were absolutely terrible. But what's even worse is the fact that McGonagall knew this all along. She even warned Dumbledore and said they were the worst type of muggles. But it seems that she never even wanted to check on Harry after dropping him off. Miss Fig didn't stop the abuse either, but McGonagall had to know what Harry went through since his first Hogwarts letter was addressed to the cupboard under the stairs. The letters changed based on Harry's location, so McGonagall must have had a clear idea what Harry was going through, and yet she never wanted to intervene or help. Fan theories state that she might not be so innocent after all, and the truth is, she really didn't want to help Harry as much as she looked like she did. So much for being a motherly character. The truth about Crookshanks. This is one of our favorite fan theories. And despite the logical flaw, which we'll mention in a little bit, it does seem the most believable. We've all met Crookshanks, but this furry cat also holds a lot of mystery to it. In fact, there's not a lot that's known about his origin. Fans seem to state that Hermione wasn't the cat's first owner, considering she bought him from a pet shop, and the sales witch said that he's been there for ages and no one wanted him. We also know that the Potters did actually have a cat because Harry found his mother's letter in Deathly Hallows. The letter stated that Harry almost hurt the cat while on his toy broomstick, and he even wondered what happened to the cat. So what if Crookshanks actually belonged to the Potters before Hermione got him? Maybe someone found the cat in the magical menagerie, took him in after he was left without his original owners. Seems pretty believable, right? The one big flaw with this theory is that Sirius would have definitely known Crookshanks since he was friends with the Potters. He even said that he had to gain the cat's trust at some point. But who knows, maybe they got Crookshanks after Sirius was sent to Azkaban. Fred and George switching bodies. One thing that's not explored enough in Harry Potter are twins. It seems strange that twins wouldn't have any extra powers or any other magical inklings, right? A theory states that Fred and George were actually interchangeable and could switch bodies whenever they wanted. Molly and Arthur even worried when Fred and George weren't really doing any accidental magic as kids, but we all know that could never be the case. So what if they were really switching bodies all this time and no one even noticed? The theory states that Fred and George learned to act like each other ever since they were kids, which is one of the reasons why they can finish each other's sentences. They just know each other that well. From keeping their grades up to keeping each other awake in class, they were switching bodies to help each other in life. Soon their trick is discovered by Lee and later several other people that just get to know them really well. The theory goes as far to state that this goes on after Fred passes. The two continue to switch bodies until it's George's time to join Fred at the King's Cross station. A theory and a fanfiction. We really need this to happen.